So, you've probably heard the word gospel before, right? Maybe in music or just thrown around in conversation. But what does it actually mean? It's one of the most foundational ideas in Christianity, and today we're going to break down exactly what it is. So, let's jump right in. Okay, if you boil it all down, this single sentence is really the core of it. The gospel isn't some super complex list of rules, but a message about reconciliation, about how the gap between people and God can actually be bridged. And that little phrase, made right, that's everything. That's the key idea we're really going to dig into today. And the word itself is a huge clue. Gospel literally just means good news. The term itself is a promise, framed as this incredible message of hope for the world. But that immediately makes you ask a question, doesn't it? If this is the good news, well, what's the bad news it's saving us from? Right. To really get why the good news is so, good, you first have to understand the problem it's solving. The solution only really makes sense when you know what it's rescuing you from. So let's start there. The problem really boils down to this one little word, and it's a word that can be pretty loaded: sin. But the concept here is actually pretty straightforward. It's about falling short of God's perfect standard, our moral imperfections. And the biggest, most critical consequence of that, it creates a separation from God. And wow, the consequences of that separation, they're serious. We're not just talking about getting a slap on the wrist here. This framework describes a state of condemnation, like lawbreakers in a courtroom. It says there's a price, a debt, that has to be paid. It talks about spiritual death and even enslavement. The stakes are just incredibly high. And all of this, it leads to what's called the death problem. And look, we're not just talking about our bodies eventually giving out. In this context, death is the ultimate spiritual consequence of sin. It's that final, total separation from God, which is said to decide our eternity. But this is where everything turns around. It's like a perfect mirror image. For every single piece of the problem, the gospel presents a direct and powerful solution. For sin, there's forgiveness. For separation, there's reconciliation. Condemnation gets replaced with righteousness, which just means getting a right standing before God. And death is conquered by eternal life. You can see it right there. This is the good news in action. So, okay, that table shows us what the solution is, but how is it even possible? Well, the entire answer revolves around the person and the work of Jesus Christ. The process is really broken down into three huge, crucial steps. First, Jesus lived the perfect, sinless life that we couldn't. Second, he willingly paid the price for our sin. He took the punishment we deserved through his death. And third, and this is the game changer, he proved his victory over it all by resurrecting 3 days later. And this right here captures the transaction at the very heart of the gospel. See, it's not about us trying to be good enough to earn our way back to God. It's more like an exchange. Through faith, which is simply trusting in what Jesus did, his perfect life is counted as ours, and his payment covers our debt. That is how someone is made right with God. So you might be thinking, okay, this is all interesting theology. But the thing is, it's not meant to be just an idea you admire from a distance. The gospel is presented as a fundamental invitation, a personal offer from God to every single one of us. And just look at what's on the table with this invitation. It's an offer to join God's kingdom, to be completely forgiven for your sin, to become an adopted child of God, to receive eternal life, and to have that broken relationship with our Creator totally restored. This is where the good news gets deeply, deeply personal. And this is absolutely key. This message isn't for a select few. It's not a private club. The gospel is described as a global message of hope and salvation, and it's meant for every person in every nation, absolutely everywhere. So we've walked through the problem, the amazing solution, and the personal invitation. The gospel is presented as God's message for the entire world. And if that's true, it leaves us all with one final, pretty massive question to think about. What does it mean to truly listen?